Mom, what's up?
I hear my daughter's indifferent voice on the other end of the phone. Nothing special, but are you doing okay? You should call me once in a while. When I say this, she replies, yeah, I'm good. I'm talking to my daughter, Emily. She's a college student living on her own. Ever since she left, I've been living alone and feeling lonely. I'm turning 50 this year. It's been 25 years since I lost my parents by a car accident, and 20 years since I divorced my ex-husband. My ex-husband and I used to work in the same building, and often said hi to each other in the elevator. As time went by, we found ourselves chatting more and more. We began to meet for drinks after work, and it wasn't long before he shared his feelings for me. I had always found him charming, so when he asked if I'd like to pursue a relationship, I happily agreed. We dated, visiting various places like movie theaters, bowling alleys, ski resorts, ice rinks, Christmas markets, beaches, zoos, and aquariums. And a year later, he proposed to me.
Let's make a happy family together,
he said. His words of love touched me deeply, especially since I had lost my parents and had no family home to return to. Our marriage life was truly happy. We had a great relationship and were blessed with 2 children. But that happiness didn't last long. When our children were 3 and 1 years old, we decided to divorce. The cause was a difference in values. In the early days of our marriage, we tolerated each other out of love, but eventually, it became unbearable. My ex-husband was an extreme penny pincher, to put it mildly. I, on the other hand, was quite the spender, which he couldn't stand. I was working while I put my kids in daycare, trying to spend within my salary without affecting our finances. But he complained about every single purchase I made, even a dress or a pair of shoes. He nagged daily about how I used electricity and water. I couldn't bear them. Our fights increased, leading to divorce. In the end, he took our 3-year-old son, and I took our 1-year-old daughter, Emily. Since the kids were young, we decided not to see each other again, for their sake. We thought it would be best for kids to think of any new partners as their real family. 20 years have passed since then. I never remarried. Emily is now 21 and a fine college student. I often wonder how my son John is doing now. I've never once forgotten about him. That adorable smile when he used to call me mommy and beg to be held. John is now 23 years old. Did he find a good job? What does he do now? I'm really curious, but I haven't been in touch with my ex-husband. I feel like I shouldn't know. Now, he's not my son anymore. He probably has a new mother now. Looking back, my life after the divorce was devoted to working hard and living almost only for Emily's growth. I never had time to think about myself or my own happiness. I dedicated my life to Emily, but I always thought about my son. Recently, I find myself lost in thought more often. One day, something happened. I finished my work at a client's place earlier than usual. Maybe I should take a detour for a change. I suddenly thought and took a train going the opposite direction of home and headed to a cape where I could view a beautiful sunset. This place was a nostalgia place where my ex-husband and I used to date, with a lighthouse, an observation tower, a park, and a cafe. This brings back memories. The sunset is still as beautiful as ever. After a long time, I saw the unchanged sunset and went into the cafe in the park. Then, I saw a young man sitting alone at a terrace table, drawing in a sketchbook. I was shocked when I saw his face. He looks just like him. He was the spitting image of my ex-husband when he was young. I guess he is in his mid-20s. His features, contour, skin tone, and even his stature were all reminiscent of my ex when we first met. Could a stranger really look so much alike? I'm sure he's not a stranger. Thinking this, I approached the young man. "Excuse me, I'm really sorry to bother you, but you really look like someone I used to know. May I ask your name if you don't mind?" Looking back, it must have seemed weird to suddenly ask a stranger's name. I was too flustered to think that straight at that moment. He looked surprised but soon replied,
"My name is John."
"And your last name?" When I asked, he replied, "Smith." "That's what I thought. It's really him. It's John." "Sorry, but how old are you?"
"I'm 23.
There's no doubt about it, I thought in my mind. This young man was John, my son who I had parted with 20 years ago. I was overwhelmed by the situation and fell silent. Then he asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Sarah Johnson." I answered with a made-up name on the spot. I didn't want my ex-husband to find out I had met my son, even if it was by coincidence, because we had promised never to meet the children we each took after the divorce. But I had no intention of revealing that I was his mother. Then he said with a smile, "Nice to meet you, Sarah."
It's a beautiful day, isn't it?
"Yes, it is." After that, we chatted briefly about the weather over the past few days while having coffee, and then we parted ways. I was so happy, I felt like I wanted to jump for joy. John, he's grown so tall and become such an adult. His voice is just like his father's. I'm glad I saw him. Since then, I adjusted my work schedule and started visiting that cafe regularly. I learned he came to the cafe twice a week. He had Wednesdays and Sundays off and came before the sunset, began to sketch as his hobby. He worked in real estate. As we met twice a week, we started talking about various things. We talked about his work, his family, his childhood, his student days, and also about my job.
Do you have any hobbies, Sarah?
I haven't really had any particular hobbies. I've been so focused on raising my daughter all these years, and she just turned 20 last year. It's kind of like I'm finally taking a breather. Maybe I should find a hobby for my old age.
Why don't we draw together?
Oh, I'm just a beginner. I haven't drawn anything since art class in high school.
I was the same. I only started drawing after I got a job.
Really? You're quite good at it, I said, looking at the sunset landscape in his sketchbook.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll be able to draw like this soon.
You think so? Encouraged by his words, I decided to start drawing. I bought a pencil, a sketchbook, and a watercolor paint set. Then twice a week, I joined him in the park, sketching the sky, sea, and trees. I was very clumsy at first, but gradually improved with his help.
It feels like I'm teaching my mom how to draw.
His words filled me with indescribable happiness. As the days got shorter and it became darker earlier, we started sketching early on Sundays, the only day we both had off. It became just once a week, but still, I was happy to be able to see my son. Even if I couldn't reveal myself as his mother, it was fine to be just an acquaintance or an older friend to him. That's what I thought. Above all, being able to enjoy time together with my son, whom I hadn't seen in so long, felt like a dream. One day, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, I received a phone call from my ex-husband. He said John wanted to meet his real mother. John had found out the truth when he needed his birth certificate for a job application. I decided to meet John. Would he be surprised to know I'm his real mother, or had he already sensed it somehow? With a mix of excitement and nerves, I arrived at the restaurant where we agreed to meet. When I opened the door, I immediately recognized my ex-husband, looking much older, at the back of the room. He's still recognizable after all these years. With those farts in mind, I nervously looked at the young man sitting next to him. And I was stunned. The young man sitting next to my husband was someone I had never seen before. And he looked astonishingly like me.
Mom, it's been a while. I guess I should say that. I'm John.
He said, offering his hand for a handshake. You're John. I managed to say, still in shock. I had thought the young man I met at the cafe was John.
What's wrong, Sarah?
My ex-husband asked, looking puzzled. Oh, nothing. I'm just surprised at how much he's grown.
Of course, he's already 23.
My ex-husband laughed. Yes, of course. I realized I had made a huge mistake. The young man I had been meeting at the cafe was just a stranger who coincidentally resembled my ex-husband and shared the same name and age as my son. That day, John and I talked about many things. To my surprise, he told me this.
Actually, I'm getting married soon. I wanted you to be there at the wedding.
Are you serious? But wouldn't that upset your current mom?
I'm serious. You don't have to be worried. She understands my feelings.
Hearing this, I accepted the wedding invitation. The next Sunday, I headed to the usual park as always. And I met another person named John. I have something I want to tell you. I told him that I had mistakenly thought of him as my son for a long time, and that I had met my real son the other day. Haga, it's funny, isn't it? It's ridiculous to mistake someone for your son all by yourself. I said that, and he shook his head.
I had a feeling that you might have mistaken me for someone else somehow.
Is that so? I said, and he nodded.
But if you believed in it, Sarah, then that's fine with me.
So, he knew that I was mistaking him for my son, but he was pretending to be my son for me. Thank you for everything so far. I said, and he replied.
It was my pleasure. I had a great time having someone to talk to and drawing together. Please, let's continue to be friends.
Thank you so much, and yes, let's keep in touch. I said, with a heartfelt thanks and a warm smile. Since then, I started calling him Johnny. and we continued to sketch together once a week. 2 months later, my son John's wedding took place. John in a tuxedo looked so handsome. The bride was pretty with a warm smile, and she looked like such a nice person. As I watched them, I was moved to tears and couldn't help but cry. I was truly glad to see John so happy. 4 years later, at Johnny's suggestion, I submitted my painting to the city's exhibition, and to my surprise, it was selected. It won a bronze prize and was displayed at the exhibition. I couldn't believe it. Johnny was also very happy for me.
Sarah, this painting is really wonderful. Hey, I found a park with a beautiful view of the mountains. Would you like to go sketch there soon?
Oh, that sounds nice. How about next Sunday? Painting has become my life's work. I don't think I'll ever get bored in my life after retirement. It's all thanks to Johnny. I'm so grateful for meeting him.